Brunell Donald-Kyei, Vice Chair of Diversity Outreach for the National Diversity Coalition for Donald Trump, and Simone Sanders, CNN political commentator, Democratic strategist, and Hillary Clinton supporter. Welcome to both of you.
Hey, Carol.
Thank you.
Hi.
Good morning. God bless you,
morning.
and God bless America.
Thank you. Brunell, I will start with you. Mr. Trump was in North Carolina yesterday. He didn't spend much time talking about African-American voters. Why?
Well, I'll tell you this. Donald Trump has been on the stump. He did a new deal with the African-American voter. What he said is that he will give $100 billion into the inner cities for infrastructure, jobs, over an 8-year period. He's also stated he's going to make sure that African-Americans, as well as all Americans, have school choice, which is important to all Americans. He has been reaching out to the African-American community, asking for our vote, not acting like he's entitled to our vote. And that's important. He has done more outreach for African-Americans than any Republican nominee that I can even remember in recent history. And so he's not just talking, he's saying, look, I've got $100 billion that I want to put into your communities. I've got school choice that I want to make sure you have. I want to protect the nation.
I know, but I just wondered why he isn't talking about that in these swing states and trying to rally the African-American vote, or is he concentrating more on rousing his base?
What he's doing is he's reached out to African Americans throughout his time. And believe it or not, the African American outreach that he did for the New Deal to African Americans was in North Carolina. So it's not the first time that he, you know, is there. He's been there before already, and that's where it started, his New Deal with African Americans.
Okay. Simone, your thoughts on that? Because Democrats are out in force in states like North Carolina, and they're really trying to rally the African American vote. Is there a comparison here?
I really don't think there's a comparison here, Carol. You know, the Democrats have been actively working to earn the votes of African-American voters in this country. This new deal with the African-American community that was just referenced, I've never heard Donald Trump talk about that, and I think that's part of the issue. But on the Democratic side, Secretary Clinton and a whole host of surrogates are storming these battleground states, are talking to communities. They're at the barbershops, the beauty shops, and the Bible studies, really encouraging folks to get out the vote. You know, this weekend in Florida particularly is really important. The numbers in Florida have not been where folks thought they should be, but we did see an uptick in these last couple of days. And definitely this weekend is the final weekend of souls to the polls right before the election. So you can expect to see high African-American turnout. There have been surrogates in the states. I think Trina, the rapper, was just in Florida yesterday. So things like these concerts that I know we're going to talk about shortly are part of an outreach effort, but it's not the only thing that's going on. Phone calls have been being made. Real relationships have been built with the community.
So Brunell, are you worried that all of these high-powered African-American entertainers are out there trying to excite African-Americans to vote for Hillary Clinton? Does that worry you as a Trump supporter?
I'm not worried about it at all. You know what? African Americans don't want to be entertained. What we want is schools. We want school choice. What we want is money in our communities. What we want is for our youth not to be filling up the prisons and the cemetery. What we want is for the Democratic Party that promised 8 and 4 years ago to put money into our communities, to give us better schools. That's what we want. There is no enthusiasm for Hillary Clinton. I like Jay-Z. I love Trina, but let me tell you something. Black people want a real seat at the table. We want to know that when you make a promise for our vote that you're going to deliver. And we know even under our president, my president, Barack Obama, he did not deliver on his agenda to black people.
And let me stop you right there, because Carol, let me stop you right there.
No need to stop me. I'm a Democrat. I know what I'm talking about.
Let me stop
20 years voting Democrat. You can't stop me at all.
Carol, it is disingenuous to insinuate that because President Obama is African-American, he's the first African-American president, that he was going to be able to come in, wave a magic wand.
He used that to get 95% of our vote.
Please let's see.
He used 95 to get our 95% of our vote.
Are you kidding me? 3 straight months of private sector job growth.
Simone, have your say.
Thank you, Carol. Today, just the jobs report came out. We now have 73 straight months of private sector job growth. Black wealth has increased since President Obama has been in office. Job numbers have definitely gone up, and he has made real investments in criminal justice reform efforts across this country. We've made investments in education programs for not just African American young men and boys and girls of color, but also Latino and Native American and Asian American. So President Obama has done some good work, and so has the Obama administration, but the ills that we're facing the African-American community didn't just pop up in 2007, 2008. This is, we've got 246 years of chattel slavery, 87 years of Jim Crow. We've got real systemic issues that will not be fixed overnight, which is why it's dangerous what Donald Trump is saying, that he can come in and he can do it all. Secretary Clinton has a plan, okay? She has a plan to put more money in communities. She has a plan of to invest $25 billion in historically Black colleges and universities. Entrepreneurship, we know young people, particularly young African Americans, they want entrepreneurship. So again, folks like Jay-Z and Pharrell and Trina going out on the campaign trail, that adds some excitement and some well-needed excitement that folks want to see out on the trail. But those are not the only things going on. I was in Nevada this past weekend. I'm in Nebraska today.
Let me just stop you there because I want to get in one more question.
There are real things going on.
I just want to get in one more question. So Brunell, we know that, we know from early voting results that African Americans aren't as excited to vote this election as in past elections. But is there any sign in your mind that those African Americans that are voting for Donald Trump?
Well, we are getting the feedback that African Americans are voting for Donald Trump. They're tired of the promises. And, Hillary has been in politics over 30 years. What we want to see is her record. What we want to see is her record of what she's done in the African American community.
What I'm asking you is, are you hearing from lots of African Americans that they're voting for Donald Trump?
Yes, they are. But the problem is people are afraid to speak up because they don't want to be called a coon or a sellout or Uncle Tom. And I just wanted to say to Ms. Simone, I'm not saying that the president is the reason why we have every problem. What I am saying is that there were promises made 8 and 4 years ago that did not come to fruition for the Black community. So you're going to need more than some entertainment to get people to come out and vote for you.
So
that's why
I agree,
for Hillary is not there.
I'm going to ask the same question of Simone. I'm going to ask the same question of Simone. Is there any indication that there are African Americans out there in your mind that are too afraid to admit that they're voting for Donald Trump?
Not in large swaths, Carol. I think Mr. Trump is at about 3%, maybe 5% with African Americans nationally. And clearly there are some Black people out there somewhere that are going to vote for Donald Trump. But in terms of, are these voters that we haven't seen the numbers going to the polls in states like North Carolina and Florida, even though the North Carolina numbers are up, it's not abysmal, it's just not absolutely amazing, but it's good. But no, I don't think Black people in large swaths are going to vote for Donald Trump. I do think that there is still time to get out there and go to the polls. I think African American voters are paying attention to this election, and they want to hear, the candidates speak directly to them. And I think that's Secretary Clinton's opportunity today. She'll be on stage with Jay-Z, and she's going to have some words to say prior to Jay-Z. Thank you.
Make America great again. Make America great again. Make America great again.